Hello everybody, welcome to this video on the Social Security Lab. What Social Security is, it's kind of a retirement, a supplemental retirement income for everybody. And I do mean supplemental. It was never meant to be your main retirement source. You know, the idea is to have your Social Security and hopefully some money that you had saved up through your own investments, and also hopefully some kind of retirement or pension through the company you're working for. And that was, you know, the hopes. But recently, in the last 20, 30 years or so, one of the trends in employers is to do away with these pensions that they used to offer. All right, I know since I'm a state employee, I get a pension from the state, which is good. That's what I'm talking about. You know, a lot of companies had that, but because of the cost of that, a lot of companies are doing away with that. The other big trend also is a lot of companies are making you pay for your own medical insurance now, which wasn't the case 15, 20 years ago. You know, so the companies are, you know, because of the cost of these pension plans or medical insurance, and companies are making you pay for it instead of them, or just doing away with it altogether. All right, so that's why Social Security is becoming a lot more important, because we want to make sure, one, that it's there, and two, that, you know, if your company doesn't do, you know, some kind of pension for you, you know, start stocking away, start putting away some money yourself, and, you know, and figure out what you can do. You've seen with some of the other videos that, boy, over time, you can really save a lot of money over time. All right. Now, Social Security, just a little bit of history of it. Social Security was started back in the 30s by FDR, back when poverty rates among senior citizens were very high. Of course, that was back in the Depression, all right? So we started this, or he started this Social Security as a way to help these senior citizens. And it worked wonderfully. It was going great. The money taken in by Social Security, and of course, if you work, 6.2% of your paycheck goes towards Social Security, right? If you're self-employed, it's double that, 12.4%. So the money that they get coming in is more than what they have going out to paying on the Social Security benefits. But since 2009, that has switched. They're actually paying out more than that what's coming in through the paychecks. All right, so the expenditures have actually exceeded the revenues. All right, that's why you hear all this talk. You know, is Social Security going to be there? You know, that's anticipated to run out of money by a certain year, and, you know, I don't know. You know, I hope it's going to be there. I'm hoping, you know, to get some of that, all that money back I've been putting in, you know, with my paycheck. Um, of course, to receive Social Security, you know, if you're born, I think that's after 1960. Yeah, the Social Security age is 67 if you're born out of nine or past 1960. Of course, or 1960, it's also 67. You can retire early as 62 and get your Social Security, but it's reduced. All right, it turns out to be, I think, a 30% reduction if you retire when you're 62 as opposed to your 67. You could wait, or I'm sorry, when you collect Social Security, you could wait, you know, until you're 68, 69, it actually goes up by 8% until you're 70. All right, so that's something. For those born after 1943, your benefit will increase 8% per year up to the year you turn 70 years old. Okay, so this lab here, I think, is really important because you all are contributing to Social Security, or you will. We're all hoping it's going to be there when we retire, all right, and when you can start claiming it. I don't think you have to claim it when you retire. I could be wrong on that. I don't think you do. And also what's so important about it now is because more and more companies are not giving you a pension plan, so you have to really do your own thing in terms of saving. So Social Security is important, but also you want to do some other type of financial planning for your retirement as well. Very important that you do that. So this lab basically talks about how Social Security is is calculated, you know, for a person. It's based on your 35 years of wages, your highest 35 years of wages, and each of those years is indexed for inflation, which is nice because obviously, if you're working 35 years, the salary you're making at year one is going to be a lot less than the salary you're making at year 35. So what they do is they index that for inflation, rate of inflation, which is generally 2 to 3% per year. They index that so they kind of equal everything out. All right. And again, Social Security, I can't emphasize this enough. It's a supplemental income. All right, supplemental. You really want to be doing your own investment and your own saving. Hopefully you're working for a company that does that, but that's not always the case anymore. And hopefully it'll still be there. You hear every year they have this big discussion on Social Security. I don't know if anything ever gets done or not. And what also is part of that problem is we are an aging population. All right, so there's more retired people than actually working people. All right, so that 6.2% that's coming out of people's paychecks is not enough to cover, and the interest they make off that's not enough to cover all the payments that they have. Okay, so let's take a look at this lab. And one of the big things I want to show you a couple things here and just some new things on Excel. Like I said, it's based on your highest 35 years of income. All right, and one big thing that they talk about this is an AIME, an AIME, which is your average indexed monthly earnings, or AIME. And it's the basis for Social Security computation and is the average of your highest 35 years in wages, indexed for inflation. All right, so each of them is indexed for inflation. So what I want you to do right now in this is I want you to show you how you can recreate this little spreadsheet right here for the example that we have here. And then that will help you out a lot when you actually go down and do exercises 1 and 2. Okay, because you have to do the same thing. Obviously, that's not 35 years there. It's only 5 years. But if you can do it for 5 years, you can do it for 35 years. Remember, on these Excel spreadsheets, you get the pattern going. You tell the computer to fill, and it knows the pattern because it's smart. It'll fill for you. So if you can get a couple rows down pat, you're in good shape. So let me pull up an Excel spreadsheet, and the goal is to show you how to recreate this. We're going to use a new command that I haven't shown you before, so I want to show you that. So let me pull up a new one, and I'm just going to start with some column headers. I think one of them was year. Another one was earnings. Another one was inflation adjustment. And you can see that's kind of rolling off the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap the text around there. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. And the next column was adjusted earnings. Okay, so let me just make this column a little bit bigger here. So years go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to do it for 35 years. So you're going to probably go 1 through 35. But again, you do it once, you get the same thing. You figure it out. If you do it for 5 years, the same idea is going to work for 35 years. So I put in 1, but notice in that cell below that, I'm not going to type in 2. I'm going to type in equals. I'm going to click on the cell before that where the 1 is, but I'm not going to type in 1. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to put in that cell location, B5, and I'm going to put +1. Because that new cell where the 2 is the old cell +1. I'm going to do that again. And every time you do a calculation, hit equals. My new cell is the old cell, so I'm going to click on the old cell, which is going to be B6 +1. Hit enter. And now that I did that a couple times, you can Control D. So I'm going to highlight. Notice I started at the 3 and I filled down. I'm going to do Control D. So there's my 5 years. Okay. Now in that chart, I probably should have said this, but no, it doesn't say here. But notice how the earnings increase. It starts at 20,000. So let me go down the earnings, and it goes up by 1,000 every year. So 20,000. I'm just going to come up here and click on the $ and put it in the currency. Now, Year 2, notice it's 21,000 or 1,000 more. Notice all those go up by $1,000 each year, 20,000, 21,000, 22, 23, 24,000. So I'm going to tell the computer that. I'm going to hit equals. It's my old salary plus 1,000 equals. And there's my 21,000. And notice I highlight, Control D, there are my earnings. Now, if I had to do that for 35 years, could I do that? Absolutely. It'd be real easy. I do the same thing I did before, except for I'd go the whole way down here wherever 35 was, and then do Control D. Okay. Now, the inflation adjustment is what I want to show you. This column is a little trickier because you don't start at the beginning, you start at the end. And the inflation adjustment for the last year, there is no adjustment according to inflation, so it's just 1. So I'm just type in 1. Now, I don't want that dollar symbol there, so I'm going to unformat that. I don't know if that works or not. There we go. Now, the year before is increased by 3%. Okay, so I want that inflation adjustment to be 3% of the previous year, which is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in, I'm going to do calculations. I'm going to click equals 1.03 times that last year, which was a 1. Okay, so my multiplier is 1.03, which is what we knew it was because it's 3%, rate of inflation. It's 3% for the year before. Then the year before that would be the 3% of the 3% and so forth. Each year you go back 1, you multiply by another 3%. Okay, so this year 3, it's going to equal my previous year times 1.03. And you can see I get that 1.0609. And I have more decimals in that chart. If you want more decimals, you can, well, that doesn't give me more decimals. You can come up here and increase the number of decimals. Oops. No, that's how you do it. Okay, so I've done this a couple times. I'm ready to fill, but look at this. It's weird because I need to fill going up, not down. This is weird because all the other 2 columns I started at the top and I went down to the bottom, I filled down, but now I'm starting at the bottom because we're talking about an inflation adjustment and it's 3% for every year starting at the end. So what you do is you do the same thing. I'm going to click on that last one that I did, the 1.0609. I'm going to highlight to the top, but then come over here to fill and do a fill up. In fact, there's a fill down, fill up, fill left, and fill right for all of them. I've not shown you that before, I don't think. So, man, if you see that, it makes it a lot easier. And just to verify, those numbers do look to be indeed the same. There may be a decimal off there. I think this last number has 1 more decimal than what I have in the actual app, but that's okay. So that's my inflation adjustment factor, all right? And that's 3% for every year. So now my adjusted earnings, I'm going to do some more calculations, it's going to be equals my earnings for that year times my inflation adjustment factor, which in that case is just 24,000. Same thing here, it's going to be the 23,000, the earnings for that year, times my inflation adjustment factor, and so forth. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and fill up one more time. And those are my earnings. I notice I don't have any cents in the one in the chart, but it'll work out the same. Okay, so you would just have to do that same thing in both exercises 1 and 2, but you would have to do it for the 35 years. I think it's 35 years in both of them. But, if you can do it for 5 years, you can do it for 35 years because it's the idea of being able to do a couple rows and then just either filling down or in the second or the last 2 columns filling up. Okay. Then, of course, if I want to do the average because it says the aim is the average of all those divided by the number of months. Now this time the number of months, be careful, it's not the number of years, it's the number of months, because your Social Security, you get monthly payments, right? So if I go up here and click on auto sum, notice it sums those up. I'm going to put divided by 60 because 5 years, 5 12s are 60. There is my aim, and again, your aim is your average index. Notice 3% was the index monthly earnings, all right? $1,941.45. That's how you calculate that. That's what you need to do for exercises 1 and 2, except for you need to go for, I think it's from 23 to 67. It looks like it's 35 years in exercise 1. You do it the same way, all right? But have Excel do it. That's why I gave you that hint, because it's so much easier on Excel than it is trying to do this by hand. Much, much easier. Okay, so I showed you how to calculate that aim. Now that's much easier done on Excel. So remember, please use Excel. But that's not what you actually get for your Social Security retirement benefit. There's another step to it. All right, so I'm looking at examples 2 and 3 from the lab here, and they talk about these bend points. So basically what happens is if you're between a certain percentage in bend point 1 here, if you're between your aim is between 0 and 767, you get 90%. So for the first $767, you get 90% of that for your Social Security benefit. If it's more than that, then from $767 to $4,624, you get 32% of that, or about a third. Then if it's above the $4,624, you get 15% of that. So if a person's aim was 5,000, so this is after the 35, however many years actually, the aim was 5,000, not more than 35. If you only work 30 years, it's the highest 35 years, they just insert zeros for those 5 years, okay? Now, if your aim was 5,000, what would your Social Security retirement benefit be? Okay, so definitely, let me just put another column here for amount. I'm going to do the calculations, and this is example 3. We're going to put a little twist on it though. So we definitely have $767, right? So if we do the math down here, if we do 767 times 0.90, that comes out to be $690.30. Okay, so we definitely 690.30 for the first part. Now, notice I get 32% for anything between the 767 and the 46 and the 4,624. All right, so within that range, if I figure out how much money is within that range, and if you do the math here, so if you subtract those two, if I'm doing this right, there's actually $3,860 in that range. So for that $3,860, I get 32% of that. So I get times 0.32. So if I multiply that by 0.32, I get 1,200. Oop, I think I found a mistake there. Even though I have this written down right, 4,624 minus 767, that's not what I typed in the calculator. So let me go change this. You don't get 3,860, you get 3,857. So that's what you get 32% of. So if you multiply that by 0.32, that's where you get the $1,234.24. So 1,234.24. So that's this part right here, $1,234.24. Okay, that's not bad. And then everything above 4,625, of course, the aim was 5,000. So what is above that would be 5,000 minus the 4,624. So if I do that math, if I type that in correctly, you get $376. And that's at 15%, so 0.15. So that's $56.40. So if I come back up here, so we calculated these 3 bend points. You know, the first $767, we get 90% of that. Then for $767 to $4,624, we get 32% of that, almost a third. And then anything above the $4,624, we get 15% of that. So if I add those numbers up, these numbers right here, so the $693.30 plus the $1,234.24 plus the $56.40, that gives me my Social Security benefit and I just found another mistake in here. I must be not typing these in the calculator right, because this should be, I'm sure you guys picked up on it by now, that should be 690. If you take 90%, oh yeah, I have it right here. I just didn't copy it down right there. Okay, so now if you add all those up, you do indeed get the $1,980.94. So even though your aim was 5,000, you're not going to get that much. You're getting $1,980.94. That's if you retire on time. So if you retire when you're 67, you get $1,980.94. So that if you retire on time. Okay, so again, if you retire at age 67, you get the $1,980.94. And again, it's a supplement. It's a supplement to your retirement. So hopefully you have something else there that's giving you, you know, 3 or 4 grand a month as well, and that's per month. So hopefully you have something else giving there, you know, some decent amount of money that will help you out. But I don't know about you, but maybe you don't want to work till you're 67. Okay, so what would happen? Of course, 67, you can retire at 62, but you take a penalty. All right, 67 is when you can retire and collect Social Security and not get a penalty for those of you born after 1960. So what happens if you want to retire a little bit early and say, let's retire at age 64, which is, say, exactly 3 years early, okay? So what happens is you take a penalty. You're not going to get to 1980.94, all right? So if you, and I'm just reading from the lab, it says those individuals can retire as early as 62, but their Social Security payments will be reduced by 0.5% for each month before retirement age for up to 36 months. So just to show you where I'm at here, see if I can pull that up here. I'm just looking at it right here. Right there. So right there's where I'm reading it. The normal retirement age for individuals born in 1960 or later is 67. Those individuals can retire as early as 62, but their Social Security payments will be reduced by 0.5% for each month before retirement age for 36 months. Of course, that's 3 years. 67 to 62 is 5 years. If the number of months exceed 36 months, then the benefit will be reduced by 0.5% for those months exceeding 36 months. This means that for somebody born in 1960 or after, the maximum percent reduction of his or her Social Security benefit would be 30%. So you're taking a 30% hit if you're taking it at 62 as opposed to 67. Remember that. Okay, so back to our problem. We don't want to work till we're 67. I don't blame them. We only want to go until we're 64, which is exactly 3 years. So it's this first scenario that they talk about. Their Social Security payments were reduced by 0.5% for each month before their retirement age for up to 36 months. So that's 3 years, 36 months. So if I go ahead and calculate that here, 5/9 times 36, I think I get 20%. So let me just do that real quick. Yeah, I get 20%. So we get a 20% reduction in our Social Security. So if it was this, we get a 20% reduction, or in other words, we only get 80% of that. If they take 20% out, that means we only get 80% of that. So if I multiply that by 0.80, Let me see if I can run this through and get it right. I haven't been real lucky with that so far. Make sure I got everything right. You're actually only getting $1,584.75 versus $1,980. So basically you're losing about $400 a month. So retiring 3 years early, $400 a month, is it worth it? That's for you to decide. So I hope this video helps. I think I've covered everything I want to cover in it. The two main points are calculating the aim using Excel, and then that's not your actual benefit that you get, your Social Security benefit. You have to run it through these formulas for these 3 bend points. It's almost like you have 3 segments that they have to run it through. Anything, the first $767 you get 90% of. Anywhere between $767 and $4,624 you get 32% of that. Then anything above the $4,624 you get 15% of that. So you got to do those calculations and figure out what your actual benefit is. And then if you retire early, you got to take away the penalty. Or if you retire and work an extra year, you get to add 8% for that. All right. So again, I think I covered everything I want to cover. Again, I can't emphasize enough that Social Security's intent was to be a supplemental source of retirement. Supplemental, not your main thing. So you really want to do, as this lab talks about, a 3-legged stool as a foundation of retirement plan. Social Security is one of those legs, but hopefully some kind of employer-sponsored retirement benefits and personal savings. So if that employer-sponsored retirement benefits is not there, which it's going away, you got to be diligent enough and disciplined enough to go ahead and start putting money in towards some retirement plan and not touch it, because it takes years and years and years for that to accumulate a lot of money. Okay, well, thank you very much, and please let me know if you have any questions.